And there we are.
There we are.
Hello. Hello, everyone.
Hello. We're talking about agentic coding today.
We're talking about it.
Talking about it.
Not hands-on.
We had a whoopsie with our code base. Why don't you tell everybody what happened to our code base?
Our code base is still there, but you won't see it because there are clients of mine who are a little bit like saying, hey, we have a contract. I understand that. And we don't want you to show that one.
Did one of your NDAs accidentally cover the code that you own or the IP that you own, or was it intentional or not intentional?
It's a mixture of both, I think. It's like I have not intended that this covers, it's a little.
I know, but
you don't really write inside. You don't stream about the code base. You don't write it into NDAs these days.
Yes.
But you actually, you need to understand. It's not like it's a violation, but people feel like a little bit like, hey,
there is a
trust level.
There was an implicit expectation that was made explicit. Long story short, we had something prepared in a code base we can't show anymore. So it's we got a bit of our rug pulled just last minute before stream, and we didn't come up with anything instead. So we had an episode with Brian last week. We can anchor on that. Have you looked at Brian's setup, like his agenda, like at least the part that is open source?
You mean wait a second? I quickly need
to Brian Finster, right? He has a GitHub account called BD Finster. He has his own dev team, agentic dev team, and that looks like a very experienced solo engineers. So imagine a staff engineer just having a bunch of different levels of orchestrators in a repo. And the repo is basically a scaffold around Cloud Code. I see a lot of these kinds of tools popping up in the space. We saw OpenClaw, basically, that was that equivalent for some kind of virtual assistant. And people like Andrea Lafoggia, Brian Finster, Paul Hammond, who we had on the stream, they seem to be very much in this, I will create my own agentic dev team scaffold. And they're quite extreme, like it's quite complex. So when you and I talk about agentic coding, Adrian, are we working at that extreme, or do we mean something simple?
It depends. I think the actual complexity scales with the people you work with. So the less people you have, imagine you are alone, then the entire complexity is what type of agents do you want, how do you store your context, how you make sure that context is persistent, and how do you test, how do you make QA, these kind of things, right, in line. But it's more about, if you are alone, it's more about efficiency and token and these kind of things. When you are multiple people, tokens are an issue, of course, but the main issue is to have a consistency in between the people. So that, we had the extremes a year ago, AI came out and the teams or the team management didn't give anything about it. And everyone was just using the favorite personal subscription they had to create something without telling anyone else, right?
Yeah.
That was an extreme, in my opinion. And, I think every team should have anyway a form of, let's say, common denominator you agree on, a baseline. You shouldn't just code away anyway. So that's, we have tools, of course, like Prettier, but I don't really mean those. I mean a little bit like the things based on discipline as well. So we should talk as a team. How should we do that? Let's own that decision together. Right? That's what I think. And what Paul and what Brian and all the people do is, in fact, the same thing, just in more complex, with AI, because AI make things more complex, because AI is a helper for an engineer, not necessarily built for a team of engineers.
Yes.
So you need to build the framework for working with isolated agents as a team together, because they don't know what time is, they don't know what group is, that they don't know even where they run or why. It's only what you tell them. And the art is to tell them what's necessary, right? And create some form of shared context. And there are multiple approaches for that. I know teams who try to work with RAGs, who have specific pipelines, who continuously break down decisions into specific aspects, vectorize them, hash them into specific things, remove others. Again, it's a little bit that's complicated. I wouldn't do that. I don't recommend it right now, because I think ragging is I call it ragging. Is basically a very complex thing, and it's very imprecise. It helps with personal knowledge, personal or knowledge database. It's great. It's very bad for very dynamic data, because you need to remove the stuff out there again. And that's one of the issues, for example, with what you see with 𝗏GPT projects, which is basically a built-in RAG, but you don't have access to the data. It basically handles it for you, that it adds and removes data. The problem is it don't really removes any data. That's one of the issues. You really need to say, forget about this, and it starts to forget about this, but you don't know exactly what it forgets. It's just a little bit weird. And so AI RAGs have the tendency that the vectors, it's just basically chunked data for the AI to be very precise and be able, that's interesting, but it compounds additive, but it's not really subtractive. So it only grows, it never really shrinks. That's my biggest issue with that. So it's better to curate files and keep them small as a team, and own that process. I think that is a common denominator you see in every of these kind of aspects, that you need to have that. Some are very heavy into skills, so they say, we don't have much context, you use a skill, and we curate the skills, we manage the skills, we work on the skills, like working in the garden is a little bit like we all participate there. And others have no skills at all, they just use general purpose AI and have a lot of context, and they use that context. Therefore, that is, depending on what you have, some combine that, and that becomes to be very unique. Because if you, for example, if you are in a very large organization, you have a lot of services, you have a lot of modules, a lot of contexts based on domains and these kind of actions and these kind of things, then you have another set of things, like in a greenfield project with, let's say, 200,000 lines of code, where that's everything, right? Especially more modern front-end things, where you have a Next.js project and some serverless functions. That is a total different story. You probably don't have a lot of domain knowledge you need to share. You have, how you handle your users, how you handle your products, that's it, right? And a little bit about the overall architecture. And most of the stuff maybe you give is like, how shall the AI work with these kind of things, right? How you test, how you run QA, sub-agents, these kind of things. But that's already it. So especially smaller teams could start very, very, very quickly with code in the project. Define the project, one thing is, 1 year ago or half a year ago, everyone was just in the 𝗏MD. Everyone said, this is this WAR file. It is not enough. We realized very fast when you want to work with a team, that is not enough. Especially it is as soon as the file gets larger, like visually, like let's say 4 or 5 pages, right? It will get messy. It forgets what you have set in the beginning. It doesn't remember what
actually wanted to talk about that. So I'm just gonna put, where's my 𝗟𝗏𝗀? 𝗟𝗏𝗀. It won't show my 𝗟𝗏𝗀. For some reason, it doesn't pick up my Chrome tab that has 𝗟𝗏𝗀 open. Hang on. What the hell? Where'd it go? What's going on?
I tried to explain my camera to focus me.
Oh, maybe I have too many Chrome tabs open, and it actually... Okay. Hang on. Let's do something else. I have too many Chrome tabs open. There is a limit how many Chrome tabs it'll allow you to browse through in screen share, and apparently I have hit it. There we go. I didn't know, by the way. Okay. 𝗥𝗲𝗀. Is this the one? Yes.
When you start streaming, so if anyone in the audience is coming to the idea, it's a great idea to start streaming. You know, you're going on a journey, you're embarking for a journey, which basically where learning never ends because you fail every day. There is no session where not a single incident happened. That's absolutely awesome.
I mean, last time with Brian, we even had an outage midstream. So I just want to come at it from this perspective of we have the dev, and we have the robot.
Scale a little bit.
Okay. We have the dev, and we have the. I can make the screen smaller because I think that.
While he's doing that, hello audience.
Hello audience.
Give us a little bit of a comment that you are there. It's easier to speak to you when we know that you're actually there. Because we see a lot of numbers, but not who. So let us know if you have questions, if you have feedback, if you are thinking we are talking nonsense here. Let us know.
Ooh, did I forget to accept the Substack invite?
Yeah, me too.
You too.
So okay. No Substack today.
Okay. It's gonna be that kind of. We have a comment. 𝗍𝗶𝗀 says an intermediate in Next.js and TypeScript doing some freelance project for free. You can experience it for Gen AI. So
let's read it correctly because there are people are listening. I'm intermediate in Next.js and TypeScript doing some freelance project for free to gain XP guide for Gen AI. So actually, thanks for letting us know why you're here.
That's good context, yeah. So, you know,
I'm a big fan of Next.js. Just saying. Love it.
Oh, the toolbar changes if the screen is smaller. Interesting. I didn't know that. Oh, that's really handy. Wow. Anyway, so what I wanted to pick up on first is that once you're in this, oh my God, my mouse. Once you're in this loop, right? In this loop, what is just you prompting Cloud or Codex or whatever, and manually, you go into plan mode, it generates something, it talks. I would not consider that agentic coding. I just want to emphasize that me talking to an LLM inside the IDE while I'm coding something from prompt to prompt, and we have this exchange sort of very statically. For me, that is just a copilot. It can generate, but it's not really useful. At the end of the day, it's just going to generate code really fast, and I'm just going to be stuck reviewing. And then I will undoubtedly be unhappy reviewing the code. And then it will, disappoint me again after the next prompt.
Good. So, then what is agentic for you?
So to me, now, that's what I wanted to talk about, right? Because I found it very easy to draw the line of what isn't, but then the what is has multiple areas, at least from what I'm picking up. One of them is definitely using sub-agents for skills, right? So, a year ago, everybody was a prompt engineer. How I would call it nowadays is that there seems to be some level of extra brain power being invested into optimizing context sizes. So when I see an engineer starting to optimize skill usage across sub-agents, so sub-processes, or compacting, resetting, rewinding back, that is getting close, but it depends on the caliber of the usage. What I would definitely call agentic usage, however, would be if you have hooks set up, specifically pre-tool usage, right? In Claude, this is pre-tool use.
Explain it for people who have never really worked with that, not who are already in game, okay? That's better.
Yeah, so pre-tool use is a hook that you can say, before So for example, pre-tool use or pre-write, before Claude changes something in my code base, I will check what it's doing. So if it's using the write or edit tool, I will check what files it's editing. So for example, a very common TDD pre-tool would be, if we're doing some kind of TDD loop, when we're modifying tests, I want the implementation not to be touched. When we're making the test pass, I don't want the tests to be modified. So there is a prompt living inside the pre-tool hook that is steering the AI about contextual behaviors that it must or must not do, because otherwise it'll cheat. And you'll say, I have a test here, make it pass. It might as well just remove the test. And then you see that, and then you're like this grumpy parent and say, not like that. No, we said X, Y, and Z. Right? So when I have to go that really childish back and forth of, no, that looks silly, let's do it this way, the more you have to repeat yourself and repeat your asks, to me, it's a signal that we should be going into that more advanced agentic flow. Right? That's why I'm bringing it up, because that seems to be one of the common denominators when people really start seeing productivity gains.
Is for you a pre-tool use the planning mode?
No,
or part of it.
Also. So you can have pre-tool use for like the planning step, or pre-tool use for AI is about to modify a file. If I have a hook set up that says, hey, I have a guard here, don't, under certain conditions, do not allow the tool to, destroy a test if we're writing the implementation or something like that. Or post-tool use. That is now something that I've been picking up more lately. That has been my focus as a coach, right? So focusing more on, right? So post-tool use will be here. So pre-tool, by the way, the diagram is time-specific. So pre-tool use would be Claude decides to use something, uses it, and then gives it to me. This is where the pre-tool use hook fires. And then the post-tool use fires after the tool has added it. And now I get a chance to see, okay, it just used the tool. What should I do now? Right? So I can tell it in the pre-tool use. Basically, I can enforce the TDD workflow here, or whatever you're using, right? So that if it's about to, cheat on the test, that it immediately blocks it without me being in the loop, without me saying, no, Claude, bad Claude, we're not doing that in the red phase, right? Because then that's a waste of my time to remind it, because it hasn't been obviously trained on TDD. It knows about TDD, but I need to create rules. The post-tool use would be something like, if I see it, we have a 𝗍𝗲 is in chat. He's in Next.js. So if I have TypeScript or TSX or some kind of Next.js route or config being or component being changed, I can then force it on post-tool use, highlight it, for example, for the write step, right? For the write step of modifying a file, I can force it to go into code review, right? So if it writes production code, I can tell it, hey, when you detect that the LLM, changed a file that isn't a markdown file, but it is considered production code, go through run the command that runs code review. So code review would be running the linter, running the tests, running the, just generating enough feedback to the LLM getting feedback from itself before it comes and bothers me. So that's one level. Now there's another level where after this step, it is allowed to go back into its own loop without talking to me, right? So it's like, hey, if you don't pass code review, revert and try again once. Now, this would be now closer to that extreme that I saw in, everybody who you look at on social media, this is what they talk about. And it looks very extreme, but I can tell you from experience, a very small minority of engineers codes like this. This is extremely advanced. And it's also quite custom. Like you do have to set it up. It's quite annoying to set it up because it feels like, you know how you had to set up TypeScript projects and you need to install this and the tool and the TypeScript compiler and the ESLint config and are you using this kind of module or that kind of module, and is vtest running on JavaScript or is it transliterating? How is the hot reload working? And it feels like the only reason we started using Next.js is because we just couldn't be bothered setting up the freaking project anymore, and we just wanted to have one tool do everything for us. Like that was one of the big selling points of, you know, React. What was it? The React sample application, and then Next.js and Nest.js, and then Vite, and then out of those projects we got, anyway, tangent. So the more advanced agentic loop, what then we deliberately do, this is now the advanced part going once, and you can go one more step further. I'm going to use a different color. I apologize. And I do apologize for the colorblind people. I am using like colorblindness unfriendly colors. Please forgive me. We can also then use something like Ralph or Cloud Code's new loop functionality, where we just tell it, hey, this is your loop. If you change a file, do code review. And I'm just assuming that you'll get it wrong. So do a few iterations, but not more than 5. And then give me the result. Right? So the plan mode versus accept mode is a sort of half step, like half of iteration in that, like, you know, like half of an iteration without the right to get here to review the plan, and then half of an iteration to use the tool to then get to the code. Like that seems to be the naive way of how Claude usually works, but it's quite disruptive, and it requires you to, you know, it'll ask you permission to use a tool, it'll ask you permission to run a bash command, it'll write an ad hoc Python script to get something out of the project code base to optimize token spend, and that's really disruptive. And then, you know, these tools exist to circumvent that kind of usage. And then people get really creative.
What is Ralph? I never heard of Ralph.
Ralph is something that gives, I think it's a plugin.
I need to think of Tim Simpson somehow.
Yeah. So it's a plug. I think it is based on the Simpson character. Mm-hmm. Yes. So it is a plugin that gave Cloud Code looping and cron job like functionality with a limit, but Ralph is basically pre-loop loop. Cloud Code can now do Ralph natively, but 6 months ago this wasn't the case.
Okay.
But it's implementation detail. Like I don't want to get into those weeds, but you can Google for Cloud Code Ralph. And
so if we, you know, we see now a lot of salad, especially if you join later on the screen.
Yeah, this is where it started. This is where we started.
Very vegan way of working here. Okay, so the general idea is that we take over more control over what happens before, what happens during, what happens after a theoretical session, prompt session, loop, however you want to call it. This is a little bit different. So you have an entire session, there is wall time counter, then you have the current loop, you are stuck in maybe, right? Maybe you have a plan mode with 3 steps and you want to do 3 steps, and you explicitly say one step after another. You can use some kind of hooks as well to prevent basically skipping steps or doing all at once because you want to actually follow them. These kind of things are available. That's pretty cool. And I think this is what you were referring to, that you say that is actually agentic for you, not just prompting your wishes to Cloud Code. That's correct?
Agentic meaning that I am declaring in advance what I will reject as a human and how to fix it. So just do it yourself. Like, don't ask for my permission to correct it. Because usually most people use ChatGPT that way. You prompted something, you wait for the response, you watch it, and you wait. So the problem is you do nothing while it's generating the prompt. So I see a lot of engineers often just go into a workflow and then they sit at the computer and wait and watch it, or they alt tab and go read email.
You know what I do? This is the reason I have those here, so I can do something. That's me, because 3 agents at the same time, and I only have 2 hands. That's pretty much.
But that's my point, right? So it's this. It's often this workflow disruption where you ask it to really think deeply about a problem because you don't want it to go through these loops. Because you're like, okay, it's going to think for 5 minutes. If it's wrong, I don't want to wait 5 minutes again. So once you find yourself that you have these kinds of problems often, I think the normal sort of Copilot way versus agentic is then this of like, hey, like, don't think for 5 minutes, generate the response, run the code review tools, and then use the output from that to just generate another quick response. And the less tokens we need to do a few iterations to get a desired result, the faster I can code, basically.
Is it like that for you?
Yes. So if I'm designing something complex, and there's also been some empirical research coming through, but it's like one paper. Like, I'm waiting for more empirical research to come through. But what I'm seeing is that, like, those really, like, I see this in Brian's project, in my own project. I see this in Paul Hammond's project. Is that once you start using agents to control context for a skill, for a command, where you just spin off a fresh instance that has no memory, and you just give it a file and say, this, fix this. You can really get like a huge quality difference in the first 800 to 1.5K tokens, and then it starts hallucinating like batshit crazy. So there does seem to be some kind of like really precise, following orders, following instructions, generate a JSON in this format and nothing else, that it is really diligent on following below 1,000 tokens. And once you're beyond that, it's like Hail Mary. Like, it just goes off the rails, and like you need an orchestrator to rein it back in or kill it. And
I actually don't have personally the problems. I work a lot with that one, but I am not optimizing for tokens. So I am not the person who's caring too much about tokens.
You just have the credit card.
I have the credit card, so
yeah.
I don't.
Yeah, so I do receive feedback like that as well. So I don't know if it's us. Like, I don't know if I'm prompting it differently than you do, and if that results in some kind of other usage. Maybe it is the model that we're using and the sort of the memory used in the tooling lifecycle. But it's definitely what I recommend people focus on in like a ballpark area for people who are vibe coding, like, so for example, PMs, right? So if we have a PM who's coding, or a CEO who's coding, or if an engineer is coding in their non-primary domain, so if they're coding a bug fix in some other team's part of the organization, what I recommend to them is that, hey, if you're spending 10K tokens or 20K tokens producing a result, you should also be looking into spending, at least the same amount of tokens into code review with the agent. So, because otherwise it's just generating code and then you need to eyeball it. But I would much rather it's reviewing while it's generating, and if there's some stupid thing it did that it auto rejects and goes back, and then at least catches itself as early as possible. Otherwise, I just have to review like 2,000 lines of code that like at that point you just can't review it anymore. But I see this a lot. I see engineers sit down, they grab a coffee, they grab a kettlebell, and then they vibe up something. It might not be vibed up. It might just be a very complex code base, and you say, hey, I have this component. This component is on like these 10 routes, changes component, and then it touches like 20 files. And there is a pattern matching sort of function to solve, and you test cover it manually first, and then it changes the files, and then you manually eyeball it if it did it correctly.
I have something to add to that one. First of all, maybe can you 𝗵𝗵 is actually asking for some links. Maybe you can toss the links of
Paul
and Brian and these kind of resources.
So I can I have Brian's open here, so that would be like the one I took most inspiration from, because I also wasn't that interested in this until I saw Brian do it. Right, so this would be Brian's.
Just put it into the comments.
Yeah, I will. So that's Brian's workflow repo. So that would be, I think, the most extreme version of it. But it's quite regimented. It's meant for a single person sort of, or a single person controlling the scaffold for an entire team, and then everybody sort of uses the similar tools. And then they might use enterprise tools to share memory with each other, or use the code base to share context, or use the code base to share skills. Like you don't need to break out of this. But I took a lot of inspiration from his work. That's also, you know, by
it is like a senior advanced staff level, tech lead level thing.
And ahead of the curve.
Really like starting as a freelancer out. That's not like
yeah. Like he is very senior, and he is an early adopter of, like, he's not afraid to experiment with agents. So he's not saying, oh, agents produce slop. You know, he was interested in solving the research problem of how do I make the agent not produce slop? Or, you know, what is the best effort process to minimize the slop? So I would definitely recommend this repo. And then there's also Andrea. So I'm also looking at this repo a lot. This is Andrea Lafoya's. And he has quite a, I don't know, it feels more like, you know, Linux bash hell to me, but he does have a lot of agents. So agentified skills. You will see these two projects are very different. Right, and they're very opinionated.
You see, every project with AI is different right now. This is the reason. So, you know, when you are looking as a beginner right now, how to use Cloud Code in general, there is basically no real good baseline, because we as an industry, we don't have a baseline yet. That's one of the issues. So
exactly,
I'm working entirely different, even though I don't know both. I neither know Brian's nor Andreas. But I'm pretty sure I'm working differently, because it is already hard to synchronize that in your own organization.
Absolutely, yeah? Absolutely. So these are the two links that I would recommend. So Brian's is a very good example of how to use these hooks and how to wire them up, because it's just a bunch of JSON. You know, it's like, you know, when we were using Webpack, I was always looking for, okay, where is the correct config to copy paste for this kind of project? And agentic setups for projects look, I'm getting the same vibes. You know, it's like, okay, I hate this config. It's a JSON config. I have to copy paste it from project to project. I'll just have to live with that. That's what it feels like currently in the ecosystem. So having looked at a lot of fear and scaremongering of AIs will take your jobs from like influencers and prompt engineers and social media, it's all a bunch of nonsense. It's just a, you know, pretend you're a CEO, blah 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 blah, and it's like just agentic crap.
There is one little thing, is that companies, especially smaller companies, are more hesitant to basically get new people in. They try to improve the current staff they have before they actually hire new people. That happens a lot, but people don't get thrown out because of that. I have never saw this happen. And what you see in large companies is a totally different story, differently framed. There is a lot of PR going on because the large companies want you to think people were replaced
Yeah.
by AI.
Yeah,
In
and token
reality,
counting.
they every year they hire a lot of people. You don't see that, but then they basically fire 10,000 because they have hired 11,000, and then they say they were basically replaced by AI, which isn't the case. And I wouldn't go too serious about that topic at all right now. So it is simply, if you do it right, it optimizes a lot. If you do it wrong, it basically does the opposite, but it doesn't really replace anyone right now because someone needs to fire that one and needs to orchestrate that one.
I don't want to get that extreme. My point is,
well,
these two people are early adopters. Brian's project was one of the first ones where I found something useful, and I got a lot of interesting ideas and inspiration from his project, from the Agentic Dev Team project, about how to use the hooks, how to, what to put in a hook, what to put in a tool, what to put in a skill, and how to separate the agentic workflow stuff. From Andrea's project, what I took was, I didn't really like his agent setup, but I really liked his skills. So for example, he has things like, prominent thought leaders in software engineering are, for example, 𝗍𝗲𝗀 and Kent Beck, etc., etc. And what he has done is basically he has taken a lot of these, DORA, extreme programming, clean code, shift left, domain-driven design, refactoring, how to work in legacy systems, what makes good unit tests, and cognitive load, team topologies, like just taking like the curriculum that a consultant, facilitator, and software engineer would use every day in a serious job. And he has created folders for each of these personas, for these skills. And he really framed them well in such a way that the skills produce some kind of score. And then it has like a JSON format for the score. And sometimes even an autofix. Right? So how good is it? And if it's possible, how to fix it. So a skill that directly translates, like for example, that sort of hard to explain test the behavior, not the implementation. That's really difficult to explain. So there are a lot of books that explain it well, and Andrea has basically taken that, put them into a reasonably good approximation, and he has called it the 𝗍𝗲𝗀𝗀 index. The 𝗍𝗲𝗀𝗀 index. After 𝗍𝗲𝗀𝗀. And it basically, for tests, the quality of the tests basically runs through a skill that says 𝗍𝗲𝗀𝗀 index. And he also created tasks for cognitive load index, for domain-driven design, for, how do we map this in hexagonal architecture? If it's going to be a lot of integration concerns, how to best split it up. And he just has a lot of good skills that, depending on your needs, you can either take inspiration from, or depending on the license of the project or how you want to interface with it, maybe write your own or clone the project. So these two projects are those that I took the most practical sort of advice from, and we have used it in real teams, in production, and benefited from it. Specifically, the 𝗍𝗲𝗀𝗀 index for test quality, this kind of scoring system, and in Brian's case, how to introduce these kinds of like code review loops, or hey, don't touch my tests when we're in the red to green phase in the TDD loop. So among other things that I've seen on social media and the FUD and the scare and the scaremongering, these two are by and far a very, very positive and optimistic sort of beacon that to take inspiration from. And I also, for what I did personally as a facilitator, if I go to Dennis, but I don't have these shared yet, but maybe I should. What I did is I created skills for how to split up PI. Right? I created a skill for how to separate behavior from implementation. I've created a PR for zombies analysis. This is for TDD, right? So somebody who doesn't know how to apply TDD, they run my zombies analysis skill, and it interviews them about, hey, what is the normal behavior? What is the baseline? What is this? What is that? Where does the complexity come from? How would you explain it to a user? And then it produces a very good estimate for it.
Is it actually using these new question mechanic Cloud Code has implemented?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't know how to reliably trigger that, but
this is the question of mine as well.
Yeah, I don't know how to reliably.
It's so cool. It's like, oh, cool. It's talking to me in a reasonable way.
I've seen that used a lot in the web UI. I don't know how to reliably create that kind of back and forth in the console version of Claude. So I don't know, but these are the things that I see a lot being used in my teams, right? Because a lot of the times, I'm helping teams with trunk-based development, and one of the symptoms in trunk-based development is that people just create way too large PRs. And what I would normally do to teach them how to get out of this rabbit hole is just reject too large PRs. I would just tell them, sorry, PR's too big, split it up. And it always felt like punishment, because you need to be really freaking advanced Git ninja to learn how to split up a PR, or if it had forced pushed stuff, or if you pulled main in a few times and rebased. It can feel very punishing, to then extract it, diff it, and cherry pick without adding it. You just have to be an advanced Git user and be very confident. And most people who struggle with trunk-based development usually also aren't very good Git users. So it's not a good pairing. So what I do nowadays is I tell them, okay, look, I'm going to reject the PR, and please split it, but don't do it manually. Just use the skill. And then the skill splits the PR. And in the skill, I've set up two different strategies. One is there an obvious folder split where dependencies don't overlap? Or through interview questions, it helps separate out the areas of the PR that the developer thinks is definitely safe and working from the areas that are definitely not safe and not working. And then it suggests adding a feature flag somewhere. Then it splits the PR, and then one of them we merge sooner, right? So these are the things that I just created as part of sort of, working with Coach Dennis. Then we have a session, and then these are the repetitive things that I coach software engineers on that also have a very good parallel for Cloud Code usage, right? And then these things then naturally lead to this kind of workflow things. Yeah. And
for what type of companies is yours good?
Sorry?
For what type of companies, type of products, type of dev teams is your specific setup?
Typical SaaS web development, 5 to 25 engineers. That's what I've tested it on. It works well. That's my...
What would you do below 5?
I don't know. I mean, below 5, I really need to question the maturity of the company. Of do they really see productivity gains? If it's below 5 and a small code base, then maybe it's too greenfield to really take advantage of anything from here. It depends.
For me, it's the same as we said in the beginning. The more people you have, the more structured your approach should be. And it needs to be. Let's say needs to be. You can do it structured as a small person as well.
I would definitely not structure it to this degree on like a governance level. Like, I see Brian be structured as a consultant, but he doesn't force his structure onto the team. And that would be my approach as well in a very small team. It's like, I would have the structure, but then I would do it locally. I would have the scaffold locally. I wouldn't intrude my scaffold into the code base, especially if I'm a consultant. And for better or for worse, I also wouldn't be, evangelizing this kind of advanced Cloud Code usage in a small team if that isn't happening organically. So because there's no need to be opinionated. The productivity benefits are also a result of your risk-taking appetite and sort of your.
Can you explain that?
A lot of people, a lot of a lot of engineers get stuck in this loop of, I will have an agentic workflow, I will generate code, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the code, and they do none of this, right? They do none of this looping. And they generate code. The code looks like 𝗟𝗲𝗀, and then it goes through human review. To make it okay, to make it not look like 𝗟𝗲𝗀. And I find this in general to be a waste of time. But this is where most people get stuck on, right? Mm-hmm. They come in here, and then human, bottleneck, bam. And it's usually some other human, not yourself. So people are like, yeah, I'm really fast, and then somebody else suffers. I'm always looking at it holistically as a coach, and I'm like, look, I am aware that if I push this without making you aware of this, I am doing you a disservice. So if you are not interested in this process improvement, I'm also not going to talk about this. You just figure it out on your own, and then you come talk to me when your pain level increases. That's what I meant.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
But what I can see, and the research is just in on this, there are people who use AI well, there are people who use AI conservatively, and some people have, like, AI assistants, and they produce okay code. And then some people have AI assistants and they produce slop. If the company has a process of PR gating, so that it has to be reviewed by somebody else in order for it to be merged, so like a non-trunk based workflow in the company, which, let's be honest, is probably most organizations that are having productivity issues, then the human reviewers prefer reviewing the pull requests that aren't AI slop, which means that even though, velocity here might be 100%, velocity here, review velocity will be 50%. So even though this is faster and the PRs are larger and it goes much faster, engineers report that they don't want to review them, which means that the merge frequency is a lot lower, which means that the waste is a lot higher, and the risk of wasting our time is enormous. Like, it will scale exponentially. So I am aware of this. I'm seeing this effect in a lot of teams of either we just don't review it and we just merge it unreviewed, which then requires you to have this process to enforce the agent to write tests, or slop makes its way to production.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, this slop making its way to production, that is the primary fear-mongering.
Yeah, but that is incompetency, first of all.
That is incompetence, right?
Because even if you have a PR gate, and the PR gate is there because you want to filter out incompetency of actual humans, that is an issue of its own.
And it's gated by human. It's gated by humans who aren't AI assisted in the review. So my whole point is, I don't think it's a good idea. Okay, and the fear mongering, by the way, what AI companies are doing is they are telling you there is no AI slop. When AI generates code, it is immediately perfect and okay and safe to shift to production. And if you aren't using it, then you're just objectively slower than somebody who is. And that's not true. So if you are incompetent and, sorry, that's rude. Like, if there are issues in your quality process, or it's not quite clear, or it requires a lot of, checking or stamping from other humans, then AI will just slow everything down. Like it'll definitely move the bottleneck onto the review phase, whatever that is. Maybe that's a review phase, maybe that's a testing phase, maybe you have some kind of, octopus merge hell happening just before release.
There wasn't actually a software called Octopus to get
Kraken.
branches and deployments together.
The 𝗥𝗲𝗀𝗀, I believe.
That was like a tower client. It's what I mean is there was a software for Microsoft products which were able to deploy branches to specific Windows servers. It was totally off thing. I knew a company who was using that one. They were so proud of their deployment process. It was so awkward. I never saw something that complicated and that brittle and that. But anyway, so the entire process here is like, it is not an AI topic actually. Even though we see AI slop there,
process improvement.
I mean, what is AI slop? AI slop is bad preparation. It is bad knowledge about you as a human. You don't really have knowledge because why is AI slop actually being created? What was about your planning mode?
So
and there's so many things regarding that. What I don't really call AI slop anymore out, because if I see that, we're not talking about an engineering culture at all.
So
there is no reason for AI slop.
I'm talking here about two specific things, right? So, I mean, no, we're talking about the same thing. So AI slop isn't something that AI produces, but there is a human here in the loop, and AI slop is something that they have produced.
Exactly.
Because of their bad practices, or maybe substandard practices. Maybe the practices served them while they were slow and it was running at the pace of the human reviewer. But if they go faster, then they need to lower the quality to get past the human reviewer, obviously, right? So their quality processes also need to be faster. Now, what I am advising against, or rather, I'm not encouraging, depending on like how I look at it as a coach, as a consultant, is what I don't want is people to install some robot here and pretend that it's a human, and then through the CI pipeline give this person code review onto AI slop.
And they copy paste the code review into the AI slop generator, and it stops.
And then they copy paste the 𝗿𝗏𝗀 review or the Copilot review into their local cloud code, and then they like that. To me, is crazy.
Yeah, like, but the cloud providers, the AI providers, they love you for that
because you
wastes
because you spend more money. And even Claude recently came out and they said, hey, no problem, we'll just charge you $25 and we will allow you.
They saw the opportunity.
Yes.
That is not an optimization. That is a scam for the people who are incapable of doing it right. There is no need for a change of 10 lines of code if you pay $25 for that.
But just like we discussed it last week, it's not meant for us. It's not meant for us who are working trunk based on small batches. It's meant for people who are generating 5,000 lines of code and then running it through the machine, and then Cloud Code needs to like create this perfect code review to fix everything. No,
I think the only chance that I create one change which is that large is probably a Next.js migration to the next version.
Yes,
that could happen in a large code base. That
you did that once. But
that is not really something you review. That is something that happens because you need to change files. You need to add new paradigms, these kind of things, or that's.
But that is usually legacy code migration. I wouldn't call that active, ongoing development effort.
Yeah, that's not. That's just changing the structure.
Yes, specifically legacy migration and large-scale migration. It can be used if you're an integration engineer, if you're an enterprise engineer, sure, but that won't be your everyday workflow.
No,
it's good that AI can do it, but on the grand scale of things, it will be like one good aha moment and story once per year or once every 5 years, but it won't significantly change your workflow.
The interesting part is a little anecdote. My very first Cloud Code experience and live video was about migrating Next.js back then, and it was doing it in one session.
Mm-hmm.
And I was totally stunned. Today, I tested the same thing again with the most modern, not most, but with Sonnet still, and 250K token window thing, the standard one. And it wasn't capable of doing that anymore, not even half of that one. So there's so much more reasoning, so much more going around that you...
And it'll second guess itself, and then it'll ask you, it'll interrupt itself.
You need to do one thing, like the paradigm thing, create a script for that, execute the script for that. Then you maybe get along with one session. Maybe you need to compact 1 or 2 times. But it's different today. So you can do more deep work, but you can less batch work.
Yes.
With AI. That's the issue. Yeah.
No, that's not the issue, actually. What I'm talking about here is that when you're in the PR process, do not put AI to replace this person, but instead pull this entire PR workflow that is a dysfunction anyway, like you're not meant to have PRs in your deployment pipeline, and move all of the review-related behavior, move it into this person's local machine and their cloud context. And that's basically this flow, right? But if you aren't going to localize it, if you are going to run it in the cloud and pretend that it's a human being, we have tools like 𝗁𝗏, for example, that are kind of doing this quasi. But it's a useful tool because it's also looking at the entire project's health, and the hotspots, and not just the code. Please just run it locally, and that will then be a good accelerator.
I'm still a big friend of, you are responsible what you commit in the moment. You commit it, and at latest when you push it. When you push it, it's done.
Yes.
It's basically for you in production. If it's in production, no, it doesn't care.
So all of this is for coding. This is for writing software. Now there's also a bunch of stuff for being a software engineer, which would be logs, looking for something in a database. My personal favorite, Kubernetes configs and Terraform. I don't do these manually anymore. I just ask Claude, hey, just give me the stuff. Also, I see a lot of people use it for Git. A lot of people who don't know Git or lazy Git, they ask Claude, hey, just pull my changes. Which is really
what I saw lately is Claude is using git stash a lot. And I hate it. I forbid it, because sometimes I have multiple agents running at the same time, and then bad things can happen.
Yeah, again, that is this, right?
Hooks.
Free tool use. You forbid it. You say you're not allowed to use this. You're not allowed to use this. This to me is a destructive tool. Please do not use it. If I see you use it, you must use the hook. Check the pre-tool hook. And if the pre-tool hook forbids you from using it, you need to immediately take action on it and use something else instead.
What works actually quite well is we make a lot of commits per day. And I don't like to have a, let's say, commit message which just describes what you see in the files anyway, because no one is really reading those. So it's basically worthless.
Commit messages, yes.
So commit messages is like you have something, and the AI got, in our cases, a lot of pre-context. Even why the user is needing this, it does know about the README files, it does know about the business case, the technical, and we basically have the rule that AI shall talk, let's say, describe the change in the perspective of a user, of an end user. And that, it makes it so easy to just tell the AI, create a complete change log for the end users of this month.
That's why I wanted to talk about this, because now, being a software engineer, I would also encourage you to use the MCP functionality of your tool, if appropriate. Specifically, project management and commit messages, Grafana with logs. So you can ask it, hey, I am seeing this error. Create a Grafana dashboard for me, because it's in JSON. Create a Grafana dashboard for me that helps me debug this error. And that's freaking awesome. and it'll just create like a dashboard for you temporarily that will help you see what's happening, and then you just delete the dashboard. And that's freaking awesome. No more manually querying stuff. Of course, if your Grafana dashboard is, hooked up to like a read
I hate
replica.
Grafana.
I know. But I also hate Grafana because I hate setting up the dashboards. But Claude can set up Claude can do the part that I hate, and it's like chef's kiss. And then you teach people, you create like skills for specific kinds of, like, for example, customer success related pre-investigation. You can create a skill for that. It'll spawn a dashboard, and then the ticket has a link to the dashboard, and the developer already has some data in it. Like, they don't need to copy paste stuff into the ticket. It just has a link to the dashboard. So really, really, like, bleeding edge usage of MCP tools. Also, if you're in this step where you're basically talking to Claude and you're setting up a plan, for example, for a large migration, upgrading the Next.js, upgrading Next.js to the next version, for example, instead of being stuck in planning mode, or maybe putting the plan into an MD file. I hate MD files. Like,
I love them.
Like millions of MD files in my project. What we tried with one of my teams is just at a certain level of complexity, just have Claude put the MD file into the ticket management software and put it into the ticket. So use Jira, use Linear, use the software that has the ticket, that has the branch, that has the context, and just put the Claude plan there. And then when it needs it, it'll read it from there. Because what this also allows to do, it allows somebody else to observe what is happening and leave comments on it, which is especially useful when you have Slack to Linear integration. So if you're using Linear for project management, what you can do is you can ping somebody, have a Slack conversation with them on a public channel, and then you can ping the Linear bot saying, hey, move this Slack conversation into that ticket. And if that ticket contained a plan for Claude and you have told it where to find it, then the next time somebody codes using the plan from the ticket, Claude will immediately gather context for itself based on the Slack conversations. So it's a very good way, for example, if you have like a huddle or a pair programming session, if you record the session, you can then put the session, the transcript of the session, into the ticket. And then next time you spin up Claude, maybe it can extract important new information from the human conversation that it otherwise wouldn't be privy to, like stuff that you would have to write manually to keep it up to date. So that is now the software engineering side of things, right? These are the just productivity, like just in general productivity increasing tools, and also for soft skills. My favorite prompts are related to, hey, I need to give this and this feedback, but what's on my mind feels a bit strongly worded. Can you soften and polish the language in my message? And I just have this kind of Claude skill for just, softening messages or making, some kind of complex report easier to read or reorganizing it. Definitely please use Claude for like just basic hygiene. Especially if you're in a bad mood, or if the project is not going well, or if you're behind schedule, absolutely use it, because it's a great tool to just take the edge off of like that back and forth.
So if you don't have self-control, use the control of Claude.
No, what I mean is that if you don't have self-control and otherwise you would have stayed silent until you calm down, you can use the computer to short circuit that process. That's one thing. What else?
I wouldn't work at all if I'm not calm. Now, a little bit of stoic intervention.
That's not a, you have kids, you have, sometimes stuff happens. You don't always have the luxury to work at your optimum. So it's there if you need it. If you need it all the time, definitely a problem. That's definitely a symptom of something a little bit more chronic. What else did I want to share? You know that thing where you have this great idea and I'm like, okay, one more idea and I'll get to it, and then now I forgot.
Yeah, this is the reason why normally you have transcripts and use the use Claude for this. Now, actually, what we have done is we have removed most usage of our ticket system, which is still 𝗂𝗏, and we actually do that inside the repo. So we have a folder called concept. Somehow it's called concept still. It started as a concept folder where we said, okay, we have now so many concepts which are created by AI, which are iterated by AI, and every time we have a session, a transcript, that file is combined with a transcript and is updated in that way.
Yes.
And then we found out that we actually, because of that, we have basically no tickets anymore. There are no tickets, right?
We also, to us, it's mostly Slack plus Claude managing transcripts of conversations, which is really interesting, right? Because we have found, I think what we're seeing is the emergence of a much leaner project management process that is different from Kanban, right? Like we used to be like Kanban, like everything was Kanban, board, columns, left to right. And this is the first time that I'm seeing just a organic practice result in something more efficient.
I too. So it is absolutely nice to work. So we had just today another issue for another project. We had a phone call, a transcript from a team session, right? We told basically the AI to strip it down based on a context file we have for this domain, for this context. So it knew exactly what's about, so what to connect the dots with. And out there was basically a point for front end and back end, what we need to do. It basically scanned through the entire code base, what is already implemented, what is missing exactly. So we basically got, after 2 or 3 minutes during the session, an entire insight where we are right now. Backend confirmed, yes, it's the case. Frontend confirmed, yes, it's the case. So we exactly knew what to do. And half of the work was already not committed, but already pre-done while we were talking about this. And that was eye-opening. Of course, we need quality checks, these kind of things take a little bit more time for that. But it is like while you're talking about things are already happening when you have everything in place. MCPs are great. We don't use MCPs. We have everything inside the GitHub. It's easier. But it is due to the size of how large we are. In large teams with a lot of business people, and it does work. But I don't think it's working with most of the, you have this 500 other people who want to write in your ticket.
I remembered what I wanted to mention. As it's exactly what you just talked about. Is there's emergent behaviors that are very not textbook. Like it's this like unique setup, Claude code enabled, what would otherwise feel more cowboy, like just winging it. But it's actually the tool is just using natural language instead of like something that looks like a spreadsheet. Like we're used to formal practices and enterprise tools or software project management tools to at some point look like some kind of spreadsheet. Jira would be the best example of just right, and either it looks like a spreadsheet or it looks like a calendar or it looks like a like a burn down chart, right? So we see a lot more natural language processing pop up in road mapping, in planning, in designing, in automatic ADRs, in architecture diagrams, a lot more specs, even spec-driven communities, Auto from Sam Hattum or the event modeling community. There's a lot more human language to natural language overlap and less project management hell with tickets and stories, which I'm very happy about. What I wanted to mention is that in this sort of organic phase, like what I do as a coach primarily is there's the code, right? That is sort of like it's a medium of exchange, let's say. So, and underneath that code is the design that you had in mind when you produced it.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening in the brain as you're typing the code. There is no emergent design that TDDers or opponents of TDD would have you think that it'll just pop up. No, it'll you have to be looking for it. Like you still have to be actively engaged into being open to thinking about it differently. But so it becomes before the code leaves your fingers or leaves Cloud Code's I don't know, tentacle or what it has. There's the design about how to structure the code, and then there's the process of how you code. And my recommendation to most people is, what I'm coaching people is, we are focusing on this. When I talk about design and mentoring and coaching, most people think what we will be discussing is this. Hey, teach me OOP, or teach me event sourcing. Or
that's absolutely, I hate that. But
or
people
teach me
come to you, they always start with, I need to know about this, about that specific technology or methodology.
Yeah, teach me design patterns.
That's awesome.
Right. Teach me like stuff. Very tactical. And these things are just ways to handle architecture, code smells, right? And then they improve the design of the code.
That's more something you do in courses, in my opinion.
Yes, that can be it's just a general low-level skill. It's more like, very tactical, very fundamental, and transferable. But what you need to be focusing on, and that's what I keep emphasizing in my coaching practice, is the process of building the code on this team. So, for example, something that I'm focusing on is, hey, we have been stuck now for over 5 minutes and we haven't written any code. That's a problem. Maybe our step is too large. Let's revert and let's break it down. Right? Most of my mentees, this is where they benefit from the most. Hey, we've been stuck for more than 5 minutes. Let's revert and break it down. Smaller test, closer to acceptance criteria, closer to the, not under the surface subcatenous backend unit test stuff, but closer to the user, closer to us being able to deploy to production. And it's this process that when I'm coaching a team that is interested in Claude, what I am also working with them on AI integration is how they can teach Claude to give them feedback on this, right? So that, hey, if we're going back and forth for more than 5 minutes on like a single line of code, stop, go back, smaller test, scope it down. Maybe we started with the wrong.
It's still not working. It's still not working.
It's still not working. It's still not working.
Dig deeper, still not working.
To keep adding, some equivalent of a Pomodori flow, some equivalent of breaking down, slicing down, and really reducing the complexity and the cognitive load of the task if you have been stuck. And then various degrees of this, right? So, for example, if acceptance criteria are not clear, you have a huge meeting, you write down tickets, you write down acceptance criteria. Are they clear? We had this discussion with one of my teams this week. Then they asked me, oh, how do we know acceptance criteria are clear? And I tell them, well, if you've been able to convert the acceptance criteria to tests in the code base in 30 minutes, then they are clear. So if after the meeting, we don't see tests within 30 minutes for at least a few acceptance criteria, then they haven't been clear, and we need to go back to that meeting and we need to scope it down more. We need to focus down. Okay, what does this mean? Can you give me an example? The example you gave me was too high level, or it was too technical, or I didn't understand it, or I misinterpreted it. And then you go back and okay, now it worked, and now we can go, into writing the test, maybe changing the architecture or changing some of the code. Maybe it will be with Cloud Code and Codex. Maybe it will be without. Maybe I'll just use this process to just, automatically log my decisions that I'm doing, and then help use the MCP or maybe the Git skills to just soften the blow on like just my general productivity of writing stuff. Or we can have it AI review code, or we can go like the full pre-tool use, loop a few times and generate the code, and then publish the production, then see if it made the acceptance criteria pass. And then the acceptance criteria go back to the ticket, and then when the test passes in production, or at least in the pipeline, Cloud Code automatically flags the checkbox for the acceptance criteria on the ticket, and then you get this really smooth flow that would be reminiscent of a team that is doing like experimenting with AI integration. Right?
I actually need to go.
Yeah, I also wasn't looking at the time. Yeah, sorry, got carried away.
Yeah.
Cool. So to recap, this is what I mean with agentic usage. Check out these links. They're in the chat on YouTube.
And that was the hands-on part in 𝗥𝗲𝗀 today.
Yeah, sorry about that. We got our.
There was a typo. We went 𝗥𝗲𝗀, not pagebar.
No, I mean we were going to demonstrate this in pagebar, but NDAs.
I try to get sharp. Well, I don't get sharp today.
Okay.
Somehow, I don't know. Let's. My
maybe
background is sharp. I don't know what my camera is.
Maybe you should revise the NDA before you sign it. Okay, but let's not discuss that on stream. Cool.
I don't think that would have changed anything. So it's like they would have demanded anyway on that.
Yeah. No, it's okay. It's okay. It's reasonable concern.
It is, especially because we have all the passwords in GitHub. So it's like no joking.
No, of course you don't. Of course you don't.
We can't show it on stream because it would be then a violation of security.
Yes. Anyway, thank you so much for the stream today.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for being active on YouTube. I'm glad you took something out of it. Happy to see an active audience while we're sort of ad-libbing a little bit with the last minute changes on stream.
Thanks to the LinkedIn shadow audience today.
Thank you. Sorry Substack crew, we forgot to announce you properly this time because we did a little.
They don't hear you.
Schedule change. No, but they will watch it on YouTube. So we will be resuming our Substack streams starting next week. Cool. Thank you, Adrian. I had a lot of fun. So
yeah, actually, it became an interesting topic, even though we were actually crashing the topic anyway. So, but it was a good one. You were really in your 𝗥𝗲𝗀 flow. I missed that a bit because
this is my day job. Like I do this all the time, so I'm well prepared.
You actually use a pen or is it mouse?
Mouse.
Okay, yeah. A master of the mouse. Yeah, old school gamer, isn't it? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Ciao, everybody.
You still use mouse gates, right? On a plastic board. That's the Counter-Strike.
No, we don't do that. We don't do that.
Not okay. Then goodbye, everyone.